What does a contraction feel like? How do I know if I'm in labor? And what does the day of labor look like? Wait, is this normal? Hey, I'm Heidi. My best friends call me Hides. I'm a certified birth doula, host of this podcast, and author of Birth Story, an interactive pregnancy guidebook. I have supported hundreds of women through their labor and deliveries, and I believe every one of them and you deserves a microphone and a stage. So here we are. Listen each week to get answers to these tough questions. Birth Story, where we talk about pregnancy, labor, deliveries, where we tell our stories and share our feelings. And of course, chat about our favorite baby products and motherhood. And because I'm passionate about birth outcomes, you will hear from some of the top experts in labor and delivery. Whether you are pregnant, trying desperately to get pregnant, or you just love a good birth story, I hope you will stick around and be part of this birth story family. You guys, my book is out. It is out in the world. I cannot believe it. I have been writing it for several years and it's just mind-blowing. Birth Story, Pregnancy Guidebook and Journal is a one-of-a-kind discovery into your pregnancy that provides you education through storytelling. So what's it really about? In the 16 years that I have served women with every personality type, I noticed there was a huge disconnect between what my clients were craving for childbirth education in a book and the books that were actually available on the market. There seemed to be unlimited resources if you are looking for an unmedicated birth or a natural birth or a home birth. But there just weren't a lot of resources for my clients who were part of the 92% of women birthing in a hospital and very much open to medical interventions like an epidural, nitrous oxide, and opioid medications. So I wrote that book to fill the gap for you. Week by week throughout your pregnancy, you will engage with material meant to educate and empower you as you plan for your own birth story. Hospital, medicated, unmedicated, or something in between. You are welcomed each week with a postcard from the womb, which is an adorable note from your baby about their miraculous development, as well as the amazing changes occurring within you. Then you are invited to use an uplifting birth affirmation and to respond to an introspective journaling prompt to document your feelings, curiosities, and wonders every single week. With room to memorialize your own birth story, this book will become a memory keeper and a legacy gift for your baby. You are encouraged to read one of my favorite birth stories each week, filled with childbirth education, tidbits, and explanations of important medical terms and procedures. These are real-life accounts shared with permission from the births that I've attended during my career as a doula. And I gave you a great mix. In the 42-week guide to your pregnancy and 42 birth stories, 7 of them end in cesarean section. About half are unmedicated and the other half are medicated deliveries. This is a judgment-free book. So take what you need from each element and leave the rest. Okay, are you ready to buy? I would love for you to go to birthstory.com and buy it directly from me. But I totally get it if you're an Amazon girl. You can head to amazon.com and just type in Birth Story Pregnancy, and the book should pop up. I'll deliver it straight to your doorstep. And I would venture to say that you might be an audiobook kind of woman because you're listening to a podcast. So if you would prefer to listen to this book, then I have recorded it and it is available for download at audible.com or on your Audible app. Thank you for being part of the Birth Story community. I am so excited for you to have this book in your hand once you've purchased it and it has arrived. I hope that you will give me your thoughts and feedback, and don't forget to take a selfie with your book and post it on Instagram and tag at Birth Story Podcast. It's Heidi here. And I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. And so this week I have a really cool sponsor who's a local Charlotte newborn photography company called Nest Portrait. So Birth Story listeners can mention this podcast, Birth Story Podcast, to receive $50 off their newborn session booking if you're in the Charlotte area. So let me tell you a little bit about them. I know that you have so much to plan for before this baby's arrival. And Little Nest Portraits is here to help you feel comfortable and confident about that very first newborn photography session. And they want to make sure that you receive luxury experience like every new mom deserves. So from expert baby whispering newborn photographers, for anybody that's listening that's done this, you know what I'm talking about, to a studio space that's gorgeous, with all the comforts of home and 100% happiness guarantee at every session. Your precious memories of your new arrival can be trusted to this really talented team. So they have everything that you're looking for from start to finish. They have all the props. You don't have to go shopping. Custom-made birth announcements, art for your home, for like that favorite picture that you love. You name it, they can create it for you. And then they even offer the hospital Fresh 48 sessions. As a birth doula, those are some of my favorites to see because those are the moments that I get to be part of too in those Fresh 48s. So Birth Story listeners can mention this podcast, Birth Story Podcast, to receive $50 off their newborn session booking if you're in the Charlotte area, or you use the code BIRTHSTORY if you schedule online. So mamas, if you're in Charlotte, your belly is growing, cross it off the to-do list. This is the Meet Erin episode. I'm really excited because this is our first interview talking about the condition PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, and a little love and comfort for the mamas out there that have PCOS. I hope that you enjoy it. Hey, everybody. Today I've got Erin with me in the studio. Erin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a fish biologist from upstate New York. We had our little girl last year, Cecilia, almost one.
Everyone that I meet from upstate New York just says upstate New York, but you have to define that for me. So Where specifically are you from?
It's funny because I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody who I work with who is from Syracuse.
Okay.
Basically, we define upstate as above Albany.
Okay.
A lot of people from New York City tend to describe upstate as anywhere above New York City. Sometimes I say upstate because we are near Canada. We are about 30 minutes from the Canadian border.
Okay.
Right on Lake Champlain across from Vermont, right outside the Adirondacks.
Happy to have you on the podcast today. I don't know your story, so I'm looking forward to hearing it with all of the listeners. At the same time, I only know one component, and that today we're here to talk about your birth story, but also to talk about PCOS. And so let's start right there. Tell me about when you decided to try to have a baby.
Started trying last year.
Okay.
And PCOS it's one of the leading causes of infertility. But thankfully, we didn't actually have much of that as an issue.
Okay.
We were one of the really lucky ones. I found out, and I've known this for years, that my cycle... So PCOS can cause irregular periods. I found out for me specifically that if I exercise regularly, that's the biggest component. But if I also eat right, then it regulates my cycle. I was worried in the beginning as to maybe I was getting my period, but I wasn't positive I was ovulating. So I was a little worried about that, but it turns out I think I was. So, I got pregnant, so.
So did you get pregnant on the first try?
No, it took 3 months.
So 3 months.
But that's not abnormal, so.
And then when were you diagnosed with PCOS?
I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 19. I've always had the symptoms, like irregular periods, super heavy periods when you have them. I've had, you can have like some form of like facial hair, which has been annoying. Thankfully, mine's not too bad, but some women get it really bad. And just like acne and weight gain.
How old were you when you started your period?
11.
Okay, so you were 11 years old when you started your period and you went through puberty.
Yeah.
You were 19 when you were diagnosed. So between the ages of 11 and 19, what I'm hearing is some of the symptoms that you were experiencing from a very young girl were irregular periods,
all the time,
very heavy periods.
So bad, yeah.
Acne would likely be normal, but like more acne than your peers.
Perhaps.
And then some facial hair. So specifically, like any specific region of the face?
For PCOS women, I don't think it only shows up in one place. But for me, it's just like underneath my chin, kind of like almost on my neck area, like down here.
So if anyone's listening and they're like, they have a teenager that's, in puberty, and these are some of the signs that would be red flags if they all coupled together. Like if you just had one of those things, maybe not.
So I think when they diagnose you with PCOS, and maybe this has changed because it's becoming more and more prevalent. I mean, they say up to 15% of women have it. It's likely more than that just because it's gone undiagnosed. But I think when they diagnose it, they can do an ultrasound and look for cysts on your ovaries. That's one way to look. But cysts are very common anyway in just normal women. So, and they come and go throughout your cycle. So in the beginning, I think I did have an ultrasound and it didn't show any cysts. It just may have not been the right time in my cycle. And it's not the only thing that can diagnose you with PCOS, right? Just having cysts doesn't do that. It's the other clinical signs you have, like these symptoms I'm talking about. Okay. All of that. And that's why it's a syndrome. It's because it's those things together. And no two women may be the same because there's a whole suite of different symptoms you can have. But it's a little tricky to diagnose, and that's one of the problems.
From 11 to 19, though, I mean, if you've never had a period, you don't know what a normal period is supposed to be like. So just kind of walk me through those formative years, like especially with having to go to, I'm assuming you had to talk to one of your parents or your doctor. Like, how did that go?
It was hard, especially in the beginning before you're really good at managing your period. Because I was 11, 12, 13, 14 years old and my periods were so heavy and it was stressful. And it was,
so did you have, would go to school and maybe have accidents?
I did. Just once, one bad one. And I was able to cover it up, okay? But it was just it was horrible. It was stressful.
In school, it's our formative years. Like we're trying to build friendships. We're trying to learn and educate ourselves. And to have an added layer of stress to this already really stressful time period. And then not even know what that is and think that what you're going through is, everyone must be, going through it.
Exactly. I didn't know it was more abnormal. And I don't think my mom really understood either. I didn't think she really knew that it was like a sign of something else going on.
Was it painful?
I did not have any pain. Other than just regular cramps. I didn't have severe cramps or anything like that.
So 8 years goes by. Something must have happened around the age of 19 that sent you and your family to the doctor.
But I think when I got into college, I wanted to see about getting on birth control and things. So that's when I would go to the doctor. I went to the doctor by myself without my mom. And, I told them about these other symptoms I have and things like that. But typically for PCOS, one of the most common treatments for it is birth control. It's more of a metabolic issue.
Okay.
And, it's like a trifecta of metabolic, hormonal, kind of reproductive issue. But they're more and more they're saying it's more of a metabolic. Like it's rooted in your metabolism and the hormones that go into regulating that. You gain weight and it's so hard to get it off. And it's weight around the middle is where it really packs on for PCOS people. It's one of the more frustrating parts because it's your metabolism is so slow and resistant to doing anything. It's you can exercise 3 hours of heavy cardio a day. And
well, I'm going to interject right there and ask a couple questions because I want our listeners to hear something. Erin, you're not a big person. You had a baby a year ago. I'm definitely larger than you, and my children are 4 and 3, and I don't have PCOS. So I can hear that this is something that you have struggled with. But when you're saying that most of the weight that you gain is around your midsection, was that true when you were 11 to 19?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be something that a lot of teenagers can have thinner midsections.
Yeah.
But you were exercising and being healthy.
I just thought I was just chunky, I thought that was just it,
So
and
in high school, you were like, I'm just a chunky girl. This is who I am. I'm not like at the big sports,
No. And
so one of the things I do know about you is that you have a twin sister. Was she going through this with you?
yes. Yeah. She was having all the same symptoms I was. And yeah, the weight gain, the heavy periods, things like that. We were doing it together all the time.
I would think that if I had a twin sister who was going through the same things that I was going through, then that would just make it seem even more normal.
I guess it kind of did. Yeah, actually.
Okay. If I was your
I
mom,
hadn't thought of it like that.
If I was your mom too, and I had twin daughters and they were both having the same kinds of periods, I would think, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is their norm. This is their normal.
Right. Yeah. It was really frustrating. So
they put you on a birth control where you still had a cycle.
Yes.
Because I know that there are many birth controls where you don't have a cycle at all anymore. Is it important for someone with PCOS to still have a cycle?
just as important as anybody else, I guess. I mean, yeah.
Now, a lot of people with PCOS experience infertility. Mm-hmm. So you did not have a fertility journey. I mean, 3 months is still 2 times where you tried to get pregnant and had either a negative pregnancy test or your period came. So I don't want to discount that at all. If you have one time trying and you don't get pregnant, you've got some stuff to wrestle with in your mind. So on month 3, you get pregnant.
So getting pregnant was pretty easy for us, although it was really stressful. Like you said, those 2 months where we didn't get pregnant, it was like I was wondering if we are going to have an issue because of my PCOS, right? But you have to give it up to a year before you know if there's a problem. So
let's interject right there. No one should wait 1 year. I'm sorry, doctors. 6 months.
Yeah.
If you are trying to have a baby and you are not pregnant in 6 months, I don't care how old you are.
Yeah.
You should be talking to your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
But they tell you, I remember I was 35 years old and I remember the doctor saying, well, at 6 months is kind of a red flag, but we don't really consider you having a problem for a year. And I was like, I'm 35 years old.
I don't have a year.
I don't have a year.
Yeah.
I was like, you're going to have to figure out how to get me pregnant a lot sooner than 12 months from now.
Right.
It's really important. Anyone who's listening, if you are not pregnant in 6 months, raise your hand, call your doctor, and be proactive. You have to be your own advocate. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I started going to kickboxing at CKO South Charlotte. They're awesome there. It's for all fitness levels, which is what was awesome. I started going there and I was not in any kind of good shape at all. But 3 years later, I was still chunky, as I will always be, but my cardio was awesome. So it made my period regular, which is the most important thing. I can't stress enough how important exercise, even just 2 to 3 days a week of a half an hour of exercise, can make such a huge difference with anybody with PCOS and regulating their cycle. Okay. I also worked with one of the owners of the kickboxing gym, Linda, is a nutritionist. Knowing that we were going to want to start trying soon, I wanted to lose a little weight. I had gained muscle, but I hadn't really lost a lot of weight. So I started working with her and I lost 15 pounds maybe. And I think that also really helped us get pregnant.
And 15 pounds is a lot because you're not tall. How tall are you?
I'm 5'2".
5'2". Okay. So when you're 5'2", 15 pounds is a lot of pounds.
Yeah.
So that's a significant percentage even of your body weight. And definitely exercising, getting healthy, losing weight, being in a really good place.
Yes.
Your body does respond to that.
Yes.
We know that, especially when it comes to fertility.
And even if you're exercising and you're not necessarily losing the weight, it's not a benefit. Like your body's still feeling that, and it's still going to make a difference in your cycle. I mean, I had done kickboxing for 3 years and I hadn't really lost any weight according to the scale, but I felt so much better and my cycle regulated, and that is priceless right there.
Yeah.
So
you get all those great endorphins.
Yeah.
which control anxiety and depression and stress.
Yes, which PCOS women are prone to
Right.
more than others is anxiety and depression. So
Probably because an increase in cortisol.
yes.
And so we know that exercising decreases those cortisol and adrenaline, adrenaline in a good way, but those surges that can cause that. So yeah, so you're doing all the right things, or you were doing all the right things.
It was so important for me to find something that I loved. I loved punching. I still do it. I still love punching and kicking a bag. Like, it is the best stress relief. Finding something you actually enjoy doing, you're much more apt to do it. And it just makes sense.
Yeah.
So then, let's see, we got pregnant. And then, I had the first typical month of like fatigue, like first trimester fatigue and everything like that. I was nauseous, but I didn't morning sickness doesn't really run in my family, thankfully. Okay. My grandmother didn't really have it. My mom didn't have it. My sister didn't have it. It was just like a very low level of nausea. A little bit of ginger ale took care of it just fine, and I was fine.
So your response to the HCG hormone was pretty tolerable.
Yes, very tolerable. The other thing, though, with PCOS, you're on edge for the first trimester and a half, because women with PCOS have a much higher rate of miscarriage on top of the already, which is high, I consider to be a normal rate of miscarriage.
Yeah, which is 25%.
Yeah, so you can have up to a 50% chance of miscarriage with PCOS, and that is really scary. And so the whole
At any time or just in the first trimester?
Yeah.
Okay. So your first trimester risk of miscarriage is double that of the normal population.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really high.
It's scary. And they had put me on metformin, which is, a diabetic drug, I guess. But it can help regulate your insulin and everything like that. And
exactly, because PCOS is a metabolic syndrome.
Exactly.
So let's go back to that. Metabolic syndrome. A diabetes medicine is a good option.
Yes.
And we've seen in the data, a reduced risk of miscarriage in PCOS patients that take metformin in the first trimester.
Yeah.
Did you stay on it for your entire pregnancy?
No, I stopped after my first trimester.
Okay.
At my higher weight, I'm not going to say my weight, but at my higher weight, at my highest weight,
I'm not going to say mine either.
At my highest weight, I was, I did test to be insulin resistant, but losing 10 pounds took care of it, and I wasn't anymore. I wasn't in that range, which is really good. Just to help and just as a precaution, they put me on metformin, and I took it through my first trimester, and then I was able to stop. So with women with PCOS, sometimes just taking metformin will really help them lose weight if they are insulin resistant. If they're not, then it may or may not help really. So the first trimester went fine, I guess. It was,
you
fatigue,
got through
and that was
it.
I got through it.
You were still pregnant?
Yeah. Yes, I was still pregnant. And it was funny, like my kickboxing gym, the owners, they totally were like knowing. They noticed I stopped. I was going 4 days a week, and then all of a sudden I was going maybe once a week.
Hey, I think that's really good.
So they're like, something is going on. So
if someone told me I had a 50% chance of miscarriage, I think I would have crossed my legs and laid down and said, I'll stand up in 14 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it was just the fatigue is what got me. Yeah. Otherwise, I felt
overwhelming fatigue, but you felt great, and you were continuing to work and all of that. How was second trimester?
Second trimester was amazing. I had a month, like my 5th month, of where I had headaches almost daily.
Okay.
And that was hard because it was like, you can take Tylenol, but it was like, I don't want to take Tylenol like every 4 hours on the dot or something. But it was almost at that point where nothing would help, and I was just getting chronic headaches.
Did you call your doctor?
I did.
Okay.
And yeah, that was their answer. You can take Tylenol. I had one migraine during that, which is weird because I hadn't had migraines for several years. And it wasn't one with aura, but it was just a really bad headache. And they said I could take like Excedrin migraine or something. And it was the only time. And then after that month, it was a month, and then it went away. Thank goodness.
Okay. I think this is a really good place to just take pause. It's normal, even when you don't have PCOS, because of the surges in hormones at different points in your pregnancy, to have some raging migraines and some raging headaches and that type of thing. So Tylenol was offered to you, clearly increasing your fluid intake. Peppermint oil is something that people use. You said Excedrin,
my sister,
migraine.
Yeah, my sister sent me I think it was a lavender.
Yep,
doTERRA
lavender
roller.
too.
I would use that. That seemed to help a little bit. But
lavender and a couple drops of peppermint too. Is there anything else? Yeah, next pregnancy. Is there anything else that you remember doing to just kind of like, did you use ice or anything to calm the headache?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
Okay. I just want to make sure we talk about headaches. They can also surge during labor, but it does happen quite often. And we just use a little lavender and peppermint and push fluids and, you know, all the things that we talked about. So then you move into the third trimester and you're nearing the time for labor and delivery. Had you taken any childbirth education classes?
We did. We took one. And that was enlightening. I was actually really scared to take it.
What type of class did you take? Like hospital-based or? Okay, just a hospital-based childbirth class.
Yep. It was actually led by, was a midwife.
Okay.
A midwife and like EMT or something. She did both. And so she was very knowledgeable, and she was great because she was like, here's my email if you have any additional questions. And I did. I definitely emailed her with questions after. So it was a good and educational class.
Job.
I was scared about what I was going to learn in the class. But
what do you mean?
I don't know. I was just afraid of like the gory details, and I was afraid of the videos they might show, but nothing was bad at all. So
you knew labor was coming, but you weren't quite ready to really, know about it.
We took the class fairly early in my third trimester, maybe the end of my second trimester. I don't remember. Something like that. It was fairly early. I didn't want to leave it for the last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. My second trimester, something else I had though. I remember my SI joint was super painful, and I'm so mad that I went so long without getting looked at, but it wasn't until I met with my doula and decided to go with her.
Good. I didn't even know you had a doula. Now I'm getting excited.
Can I say her name?
If you have her permission.
Helen from Aussie Doula. She's amazing. She actually, right when we were interviewing her, she was the one who suggested I go to a chiropractor for my SI joint. And I hadn't even thought of that.
Yes,
and she gave me the name of a chiropractor to go to who specializes in perinatal care, and they're just awesome. And it was just a few visits there. It was like they would adjust my pelvis, like the back of my pelvis. I guess right where your spine goes into your pelvis is where that SI joint is. And it was so painful. I could barely walk. Wasn't going to the gym anymore. It was really difficult. But it was just a few visits there, and I could suddenly walk again. I could do everything again. It was amazing. And I couldn't believe that I went 3 months in such pain before I got fixed.
Well, this is really good for you to just say this out loud, because so many people are like, well, what is a doula and what does a doula do? And the earlier in your pregnancy you hire a doula, the earlier you start building that relationship, and they start being an advocate for you and sharing their resources and their knowledge with you. So Helen actually is one of my friends. I adore her. The Aussie Doula Company is one of the best doula companies in Charlotte. Outside of my own. I'm just kidding. But, Helen has been on the show for like Meet the Doulas Tell All. But that is such an important detail, right? Is that you're in pain, you're experiencing something, you reach out to your doula provides a solution for you. This is just one tiny little piece of how a doula supports you during your pregnancy, not just your labor and your delivery. So big shout out to Helen right there. So the chiropractor, you go a couple of times and they get you comfortable. Again.
Yeah.
Then did you continue to go throughout the rest of your pregnancy?
I did pretty regularly. Every 2 to 3 weeks, I think I was going, just to make sure that kept aligned. And actually, I think at the end, when I ended up having Cecilia, we figured out why I was so kind of lopsided. She was just a little bit crooked in there. Okay. And I think that's what was causing my SI joint issues and some issues in labor, which we can talk about later.
Yeah. Well, we're on the brink. There. Like we're almost there.
Yeah.
How did the very end of your pregnancy go?
My whole pregnancy was amazing, and I felt incredible through the whole thing. And I continued to exercise I continued to kickbox until 39 weeks.
Whoa.
I felt amazing. And I think this is something that, I don't know if this is true for all PCOS sisters, we call ourselves, but it's like your PCOS symptoms go away. Because you're normalized for pregnancy, right? But your hormones like regulate because anytime outside of pregnancy, you were all messed up because of PCOS. But during pregnancy, you were like normal, like every other pregnant lady. And so it's like suddenly you feel as good as everyone else.
Many women will describe, like I've had so many clients that have had chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's, just very different autoimmune that I've worked with, and their pregnancy was the best they've ever felt in their life.
It's
so
amazing.
You experienced that.
Yes, I felt incredible. I felt so energized.
So the end of pregnancy went really well for you. You had felt the best that you had probably ever felt in your life as a woman with PCOS. And now labor and delivery are coming. They're ahead of you.
Imminent.
Yeah. Hey, it's Heidi. I'm interrupting the podcast to let you know about a free resource that I've created for you at birthstory.com. All you have to do is go to birthstory.com and then click the tab that says The Workbook. Once you put your email address in, an entire resource library of all of my secret sauces are available to you for free as my thank you for listening to the Birth Story podcast and being part of this community. At birthstory.com, under the workbook, you will find a birth plan template, articles on circumcision, delayed cord clamping, flipping a breech baby, packing your hospital bag, acupressure points, placenta encapsulation, and so much more. There are over 20 free articles ready for you to download at birthstory.com. Now let's get back to this amazing episode. What types of things were in your birth plan? Like what type of birth were you interested in having?
Well, I did want, probably like a lot of women, I was like, I want to do it naturally. But I very much was of the mindset that if it's too much, I'm willing to get an epidural for sure. It is what it is, and I don't know what it's going to be like. And I want to have all my options open. And I didn't see any problem with that. Yeah. I tried to prepare mentally for it. And I actually, I was convinced it was not going to be an issue, right? Everyone's like, oh, you've exercised so well. You are so fit. It's going to be so fast and easy for you. And I'm like, that's awesome. And then...
Hold on. For anyone who's listening, don't ever tell a first-time mom that her labor is going to be fast. Things
easy is not something you should relate to labor. I don't care who you are.
In a first-time labor, no one should ever use the word fast. Pick back up.
I had some high expectations because since I had kidney stones, I was like, oh, my pain threshold's pretty high. I've had kidney stones several times because once you get them, you're kind of more prone to them. So I got to the point where all I need is a couple Tylenol. I'm good, right? So, and then you hear all the time, oh, kidney stones can be as worse as labor and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah.
5 out of 10?
It's definitely a guy who came up with that one. At the end of my pregnancy, I still felt amazing. I was sleeping great. Like I said, I was exercising up until 39 weeks, and that's kind of when Cecilia dropped a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, I couldn't go anymore. That was it. I could walk, and that was it. But
so at 39 weeks, you actually felt and saw a dropping.
No, I didn't see it. It was just like all of a sudden there was this heaviness kind of down there that I didn't have before, and I was like, I can't kick like this. I can't go to the gym like this.
Because the way I want you to describe the end of the pregnancy is for people who are listening that are pregnant right now and they have no idea what to expect, like what's coming. So really kind of describe, so you were feeling great and then all of a sudden you felt a lot of pressure. Where?
It was just like there was something lower between my legs, I guess.
Was it harder to walk?
I was definitely getting the waddle going.
Okay.
I don't think it was as bad as some people's, but there was definitely a difference in a point that I felt like I couldn't, do my regular gym thing. I could walk, and it would look a little silly, but that's what I did. So.
And you were 39 weeks.
39 weeks, about maybe a couple days after that. I don't remember. But
were you having internal exams performed?
They did check me a couple times. I forget. They're like weekly appointments by then. Okay. By the time I think at 39 weeks, I was maybe 3 centimeters dilated.
Oh, that's a lot.
By the time I got to 40 weeks, I was 4 centimeters, I think.
Okay, so that's also a lot for those listening.
I was like, great.
Were you feeling a lot of Braxton Hicks contractions?
Not much. It was really only when I was at the gym.
Okay.
If I pushed it a little bit too hard, I would what I assume was a Braxton Hick. It would feel kind of a lot of tightening. And that's really the only times I really had them was when I was like actively moving a lot.
Yeah.
It was either that or like walking to my office from the light rail. If I was like really hoofing it to get there on time or something, then I would get one too.
This is really important that you're sharing this because you want to do as much labor, aka cervical dilation, as possible before you go into active labor. So your body does this with Braxton Hicks contractions. Your body does this by like helping the baby drop and get lower to put pressure on that cervix. But you just ding, 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 exercise, being upright, walking. You know, I'm not going to tell everybody to kick and punch unless that they've done that before they got pregnant and were kickboxing. Yeah. But continuing your regular exercise really helps to soften that cervix and help it come down. And around 39, 40 weeks, were you still able and comfortable to have sex?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's another really good, when people tell me they get to 4 centimeters, my natural reaction is like, oh, good. They were still having sex. The reason I would think that is because of oxytocin and prostaglandins that are in the semen, which soften the cervix.
You'll never have so many people tell you to have sex as you will at the end of your pregnancy.
Exactly.
I had everybody telling me that.
Okay. And so you were comfortable and you were able to and all of that. Okay. So you're now 40 weeks pregnant. You're 4 centimeters dilated. And did you have any signs of labor?
Nothing coming yet.
Okay.
Every time I went to my appointment, my OB or my midwife, whoever it was I saw that day, was like, you are ready to go. You're going to go. I would be surprised if you make it the weekend. They're always reassuring me, I'm ready to go. It's going to happen. And days came and days went, and I'm still working because I haven't gone into labor yet. So I think it was 41 weeks and 2 days or something. And I told my boss, I'm done. I'm like, I got to work on getting this baby out of me. So
did you have a 41-week appointment?
I did.
And did they do a non-stress test at that appointment?
They did. Yep. The baby seemed fine and everything looked good. So they kept trying to schedule me for an induction, and I kept pushing it off. I said, no, I don't want to. And baby's still moving a lot and everything looks good. So we'll let it go a few more days. And
let's talk about that non-stress test. Is that an ultrasound and an NST, or did they just do the NST?
They just did the NST.
Okay, and an NST, for everyone listening, is where they hook you up to monitors. They're monitoring 2 things. 1, baby's movements, right, and heart rate, and then also contractions to see if you're having contractions. Were you having any contractions? No, so no contractions, but baby was moving around and doing great. So they send you home. And did you do any natural induction techniques at home?
We did all of the things. Okay. The only thing we didn't do was the
castor oil?
Yes, that one.
I was like, I know what you're about to say.
That was the only one I did not do.
That's the last resort.
I feel like we did everything. I mean, I went to acupuncture. I walked all the time. We had all the sex. I was bouncing on a ball. I was trying everything. I think I kept a list in my phone of all the things I had tried that hadn't worked.
And let me interject. I'm assuming that you were knowing what to do because your doula, Helen, was feeding you what to do. Okay. Because a lot of people are like, how do you know? Your doula will tell you all the natural induction techniques that we have in our toolkit. So nothing worked. They scheduled an induction for when?
It was I think it was 41-4.
So 41-4, you had a scheduled induction, which is pretty good because usually with a first-time healthy mom, 42 weeks is kind of I've had many clients, including myself, go over that day, but 42 is kind of the brick wall. So this is good. So what happens when you show up for the induction?
So we showed up, and I was still reserved. I was really afraid of the drugs that they were going to use. Pitocin, I guess. I was like afraid of how that was going to make my labor and how painful it was going to be. And I didn't want to do it. I was really reluctant to do it. And so when I showed up, I was like, I'm not quite ready for this. I want to see if the baby is still comfortable and still okay in there. And then if baby is fine, then let's stretch this out a couple more days.
Yeah. And let me tell you why Pitocin was the induction method for you, because there are many induction methods, including Cytotec, which is a prostaglandin that opens the cervix, but your cervix was already soft and right and open.
I had wondered why they weren't going to do that, because that's what I was like, I'd rather just do that.
It's a prostaglandin.
That makes sense then.
And then also the Foley bulb catheter, which again is just a little balloon that goes inside and helps dilate your cervix. But the goal is to get your cervix open, and your cervix was already soft and open and ripe. So the next step in the induction process is, well, it can be two things. They can break your water, or they can do Pitocin, or they can do both. And so they were offering you Pitocin induction.
Yes. Yep. So, but since we showed up and I was like, I'm not really ready for this. We met with the doctor and we did another non-stress test. Okay. And he took a look at it and he's like, yeah, baby seems to be doing okay. We'll give you another couple days.
Okay.
So I was
love
like,
your
great.
Doctor. Perfect.
I mean, this was a doctor I hadn't had before, but from the same practice.
Okay.
And he seemed really nice. And I would have been okay, actually, going into labor and having a baby with this guy at the wheel. That would have been okay. He seemed nice enough. I had met him previously at a meet and greet. So.
And they didn't think that the baby was too big or anything like that?
No. We went home that day, but they're like, come back to the doctor's office. The next day, I think, maybe, for an ultrasound.
Okay.
Maybe it was Wednesday. It was Wednesday. They wanted an ultrasound just to check things out, because then, Thursday was my 42 weeks. They're like, we gotta check these things, right?
Right.
So went in for an ultrasound, and they're like estimating the baby to be on the bigger side, but they're also acknowledging the fact that it's hard to measure a baby this late in the pregnancy.
Yeah.
So they're not too worried about it.
This is the joke. It can be up to 2 pounds off at 42 weeks.
Which is
when they estimate 10, it could be 8.
Yep.
Or it could be 12. Or it could be 9 or 10 or 11. It's really difficult. Yeah. A 2 pound window is really big. Really big window. Yeah. How was your fluid?
So this was Wednesday. It had to have been Wednesday. Yes. Because I think Tuesday I'd spent the whole day trying to go into labor naturally, because I'm like, we're down to the wire now. I got to do this. So Wednesday we go in for the ultrasound, and the fluid was low, and Cecilia's diaphragm reflex was not going as it should be.
Okay.
Which I guess is just a flutter that they see. So that was concerning. So they bring us in. They're like, it's not an emergency, but you have to go now. So we were freaking out because we're really upset. We're like, oh my gosh, is the baby okay? And stuff like this. And they're like, it's not an emergency, but go. So we go home. We grab our stuff. Andrew's on the phone with Helen, updating her about what's going on. I was too upset to talk or anything. I was trying to wrap my head around this because I was mentally prepared for...
your natural childbirth.
I was mentally prepared for something other than this.
Yeah.
Right. And now I felt like my baby's at risk because I pushed it too long. Yeah. So I was freaking out. But, Andrew's like telling Helen, oh, we'll let you know. I don't think we need you yet. We'll call you when we need you or whatever. So we go home, get our stuff. On our way to the hospital, I'm freaking out. I'm like, you have to call Helen. So he calls her back. He's like, we need you. So she came right down, which is awesome. But
she's amazing.
She's amazing. She's so wonderful. So we show up to the hospital. I hoss down a pack of peanut butter crackers and a Cliff Bar in the parking lot before going in. Because that was the
last time you were going to eat.
I knew that. So we go inside and they set us up, and I'm so nervous and I'm so anxious, and they're hooking me up with the monitors and stuff, and they're looking at things, and I got a midwife, which was wonderful. I hadn't met her. She was from the practice, but I hadn't met her before, and she seemed really nice. She's like, I just want you to know that this is just it's good that you're here, but it's just one of the very first signs that the baby may be starting to get a little stressed, and that's it. It's one of the very first signs. It's nothing to be too concerned about yet, and that really helped us calm down a lot, because we were under the impression she was getting in trouble, real trouble. And
if it was real trouble, you would have been wheeled to the OR for a cesarean section.
Exactly.
If you're at the hospital being monitored, I agree with your midwife. Trust me, there's definitely a difference between an emergency and urgency. Yeah. Two different things.
Yeah.
And this probably wasn't even urgency yet. It was just kind of simmering.
Yeah. So we get there and they hook me up, and the baby's looking pretty stressed though. Her heart rate's really high. Well, let's get the head monitor on her. What is the little thing that goes on her head?
Well, now I have big questions for you, because that's called an internal fetal scalpel, but your water has to be ruptured.
Yep.
But your water hadn't ruptured.
I had not.
Okay.
I mean, I hadn't even had any contractions.
Okay. So they wanted to rupture your water as a starting point.
Yes.
And then monitor her internally with an internal fetal scalpel.
Yes.
Okay. That's the most accurate like heart rate that we can get on a baby.
Right.
Yeah.
So they did that. They broke my water and they put the little sensor on her head. And then we were just hanging out because they wanted to monitor her and hopefully get her heart rate down before they start giving me any drugs or anything.
Yeah.
So we're hanging out and I'm starting to get contractions and I'm starting to get more contractions and I'm really taking off actually.
Right.
So Helen went to get dinner in the cafeteria and when she came back, I was in like full labor. Like I was like,
wow,
there.
that quick. Okay. So that can happen with a water rupture.
It was just a few hours and I was really into it. So.
And they never gave you Pitocin?
Nope, not at all.
Okay, so your induction was the water rupture.
Yes, and I was so happy because I really did not want that Pitocin.
And how were you laboring? Because at this point, you have to be continuously monitored with that scalpel. So you have to be close to the bed. Were you able to sit on the birthing ball? So
I was able to move around like I wanted to. I was standing most of the time. I was just standing. We tried a few different places. Later in labor, I tried the birthing ball, and I ended up hating it. I hated it with everything in me.
Well, that will happen when the baby's in a weird position, which you already said that she was a little crooked. That will happen, and it will also happen when the baby's really low. So, like, the ball feels super good until it doesn't feel good, and when it doesn't feel good, the baby's in a weird position, or the baby's coming out.
Maybe that's it.
So,
yeah,
that'd be my guess. So,
but I was laboring pretty good. I mean, all like, no drugs yet. And I was like handling it okay. It wasn't easy, obviously, but my midwife was there as well. Like, I didn't realize this until after. Helen's wonderful because she took some pictures throughout the labor and stuff, which, I mean, like, had my eyes closed, I think, focusing. So I didn't know anything that was going on around me. And my midwife was there a lot. I had back labor really bad because Cecilia was sunny side up.
Yep, that would be the crooked baby. Yep.
It was...
Also called OP.
Right. Okay. I think I've heard that before.
Yeah. It just means face up.
Yeah.
Sunny side up.
So she was sunny side up and I had really bad back labor.
Equals back labor.
So thank God bless Helen. She brought a rolling pin. Oh my gosh, that saved my life. That rolling pin right over where the SI joint is on the back of my pelvis. Like, it just, for hours, I think Andrew was there rolling my back like that. And my midwife was there doing the hip squeeze for me. And it was just hours like that. But
everybody was working together.
Yeah.
How close were your contractions?
I don't know.
Probably close, right?
It felt close.
3 to 4 minutes apart.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were lasting for a minute. This is where I'm guessing when I'm talking to you, which means you were only getting about probably a 90-second break in between before the next one hit. Does that feel right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I was like,
actually, I had asked, Helen was also awesome because she took notes throughout it so that she had a timeline because people were asking me, how fast was it? What time were you doing this and that? And I was like, I have no idea. I'm not the one to ask that. So she sent me the notes, and it looks like I was so upset when my midwife checked me a few hours in. I really shouldn't have been that upset, but I was only 7 centimeters.
Only? Oh my God.
Well, starting at 4, I had high expectations.
7 is really far along.
I was disappointed. I was like, what are you kidding
A few
me?
hours. And here's the joke. You're a few hours into labor and you're 7 centimeters dilated.
I know.
That's really far along.
Well,
for anyone listening, 7 is, I'll give you an example. I went from 7 to 10 in one contraction. I was 7 centimeters dilated. They checked my cervix, and on the next contraction, I started pushing.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So 7 is very far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, didn't feel far enough for me.
Okay.
So they broke my water at like 5:30, something like that. And then I think 10 o'clock they checked me, and I was like 9.5 centimeters or something.
Wow. Okay.
I was close. I was like maybe 9.
And that's what happens when you start labor at 4 centimeters dilated. But this whole time you're just having back labor.
Oh, it was horrible.
Just butt kicked back labor. And your baby is not descending because she's sunny side up.
It was tough. So I was 9 centimeters at 10 o'clock, 3 hours. It took me to go from 9 to 10.
And I'm assuming that the midwife and Helen were doing everything they could to get you into positions to turn the baby.
Oh, it was so hard. This time I'm going to try to really remember to be more open to that, because it was like, it's so hard when you change a position. Initially, it seems like the worst possible position ever. You don't want to be there or anything. But if you give it 2 contractions, it probably feels pretty good to be in that position. Yeah. And it took a lot of strength to move. Yeah. So it was like, oh, go try sitting on the toilet. And I was like, I don't want to sit on the toilet. I don't want to go in there. And finally I did. And I was like, this is horrible. I hate it. And then 2 contractions later, I was like, this is good.
Is the best
this
place
is way
I've
better.
been. Yeah.
This is way better. I have to try to remember that this time and be more open to moving.
And I think that this is important to teach people that are listening to, is that if you do have a doula, or you listen to them, if you don't have a doula, change positions. Mm-hmm. Have your partner remind you to change positions, and change positions often.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yes, definitely.
So
I had moved around a lot, which was nice. I liked having that ability. I don't think I labored on my back in the bed at all. I was mainly standing on the toilet, or at the end, I was on my hands and knees.
And so you're still totally natural. Mm-hmm. You're 3 hours later, you're 10 centimeters dilated.
Finally.
It's the middle of the night, though.
Yeah.
So now it's like probably 1, 2, 3 in the morning?
Yeah,
something like that?
1 or 2, something like that.
Okay.
I think it was 2. Yeah.
You're fully dilated, but did you have the urge to bear down or push at all?
So that last probably between 1 and 2, that last good hour before I think she called it a cervical lip or something.
Yes.
It just wouldn't open all the way.
Yeah.
And I think that was a function of Cecilia being a little bit crooked and not engaging completely, perhaps.
That's absolutely what it is.
Yeah.
And typically what we do is try to turn you to where that cervical lip is. So if the cervical lip is anterior or posterior, we'll put you either laying back or on your hands and knees, depending on where that lip is, if it's on the left side or the right side. So you want to put pressure
on
the lip.
Makes sense.
To make, and this is, okay, let me just interject right here. The fact that you had a lip on your cervix, but that you are still natural, gives us a lot of options, because it is possible when you have an epidural and you have a lip, it's 100% possible to move you. It's just a lot harder to get you on your hands and knees, or your left side, your right side is easy. Leaning forward is easy. But if you have a lip which is more on the front and requires you to get on your hands and knees, sometimes with a heavy epidural, it just is tricky. Just a little bit trickier. It's squatting is another easy way to resolve a cervical lip, just getting into the deepest possible squat, crunching around your baby. So you have this little lip, and then what happened?
Throughout that last hour, I think between 9.5 centimeters and 10, right when I couldn't get that lip to go away, I was having that reflex, the
ejection reflex.
Yes, it was I couldn't stop, and I would apologize for it, which is ridiculous, but it was I can't help it, so
don't apologize.
Yeah,
this is your body's,
because it would tell me not to push,
you.
and I was just I can't not. It's going to do what it's going to do.
It's happening.
I can't stop it, but my cervix apparently wasn't quite ready for it, so it was just a little disconnect there. But eventually, the lip went away, and I was able to start pushing, and by that point, I was it was a little bit more of a relief to be able to do something more focused instead of just waiting out this next contraction. Because I was definitely at that point where I was I'm done. I'm I don't want to do this anymore. Every time I would feel another contraction come, I would almost start crying, because I was I don't want to do this anymore. And throughout that whole time, through my whole labor, I had not ever thought of getting an epidural. It didn't even occur to me that was an option, and nobody reminded me that it was an option. And which is good, because I knew I didn't really want that, but it was I can't believe it didn't occur to me the whole time.
Because you were busy laboring.
Apparently.
Yeah.
This time I don't think I'm going to forget.
Many things don't occur to you, because you can't think about anything other than getting through the next contraction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, and also by the time I was that late and I was that dilated, and I reached that point, I remember thinking in my head that if I reach the point where I feel I can't do this anymore, I know I'm almost done. And I thought that. I was I've got to be almost done. Except that phase ended up being 3 hours long. So it was
first baby.
Yeah. I was so it was hard, but
not as long on second and third
we'll see.
and fourth.
My whole labor start to finish here was 10 hours.
10 hours. Okay.
So not very long at all. I was one of the good ones, right?
Pretty good. Yeah. 10 hours with an induction, with a water break induction.
Yeah.
So, and so the whole time they're continuing to monitor Cecilia, your baby.
She
was doing great. So that heart rate
Her heart rate had come down within the first couple hours.
Okay. And you didn't have a temperature. You were also GBS negative, so they didn't have to administer antibiotics. Did you have an IV or an IV port in your arm?
I had an IV port.
And
originally I was like, I don't want that. But I don't think I had the option. And it was, I understood after they explained why you need it. Just for an emergency, if you start hemorrhaging or something, they might need to give you something, and this is the quickest way. And it wasn't in my way. They put it up on my arm, and that was what was important to me. I didn't want it on my hand because that would be bothersome. Up on my arm, I didn't even notice it. So
perfect. Thank you for sharing that, because this IV port is a stressor for many moms that want to have a natural labor. I could do, and I probably will do, an entire short episode on what the pros and what the cons of the IV port are. So very few medical interventions other than having your water ruptured and internal monitoring.
Yeah.
You started to have that natural urge to push. And then how long did you push for?
48 minutes.
48 minutes.
I think. 38 minutes, sorry.
38
started at
minutes.
2:10 and we had Cecilia at 2:48.
And that speaks so much to you staying in shape and having a strong core.
That's what I'm hoping, but it's don't go on Facebook. Just don't be part of these groups, because all you see is, 2 pushes and he was out,
No.
I'm laboring and I'm pushing so hard. And I said it too. I was like, I won't say what I said, but I was angry because I'm these Facebook girls, I didn't quite say it that way. They say 2 pushes and he's out. And
every birth story is so different. It is very normal. And I'm assuming any doctor would say to push for 1 to 4 hours on a first birth is really normal. Whew. It's really, really, really normal. So 38 minutes is a short period of time.
It really wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be done with.
Here's what I want people to take away from your story that I'm taking away. You advocated to go all the way to 42 weeks. When your baby was in distress, you pivoted from your birth plan with, ease and confidence. You had a doula by your side and your husband by your side to support you. You had your water broken as a medical intervention, which you didn't even have to get Pitocin. And you continued to labor completely naturally for 10 hours and you pushed for 38 minutes. Erin, you have an incredible birth story. And there's so much I hope people learned from today's episode and hearing you talk about the journey of PCOS from the time that you were 11 years old. I just learned so much from you, and I appreciate you being on the show today. Before you go, what has been your favorite baby product?
Something with PCOS. From the start of puberty, right? You don't get a lot of mammary gland tissue.
Okay.
So I always thought I just had small breasts because my mom is 5'2" and 100 pounds, and she has small breasts. But it turns out it's because of PCOS. So it resulted in a low milk supply.
Okay.
And I had been to a lactation consultant, which everybody should go to if you're going to breastfeed. They're amazing. They're little angels to teach you and the baby how to breastfeed.
100% agree.
Yep. I did end up having to supplement with formula, which is fine. Fed is best. Something that really helped me with that was the Haaka.
Okay. Tell me about it.
It's like the silicone, it's almost a suction cup with a little cup on it.
Okay.
When you breastfeed, you may leak out of the other side. Or for me, getting out of the shower, I would all of a sudden start leaking all over the place. So not having a whole lot of supply, I wanted to catch everything I could. And these little Haakas, you just stick them on there and it just fills up the cup for you, and you don't lose all of that milk. So it was really important to me that I was able to do that after I discovered this was a thing. So that was my favorite thing, because it helped me just give her a little bit more of myself to her that I otherwise would have lost.
I think that's amazing, and I think that's the best product recommendation we've had so far. So I will link to it in the show notes, and I appreciate all that you are and all that you've shared with us today. We've learned so much, Erin. Thank you.
Thanks.
At the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned Little Nest Photo. And just a reminder, if you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, you can receive $50 off your newborn session booking by using the code Birth Story when scheduling online, or if you call them at 704-847-4444 and you mention the Birth Story podcast, you can get that $50 off your newborn session. Thank you for listening to Birth Story. My goal is you will walk away from each episode with a clear picture of how labor and delivery might go, and that you will feel empowered by the end of your pregnancy to speak up, plan, and prepare for the birth